Hi, my name is Dale Johnson, and I like to make things. Welcome to another Let's Draw. Today we're going to draw Sonic the Hedgehog. And as you can see, I've already got my thumbnail over here. I'm just going to go at it. And I'll try and speak up this time so that it's easier to hear me. Past couple of ones, kind of had trouble hearing what I've been saying, especially when I've got the music in the background. And you were wondering, yeah, I add the music in post. It would be a hassle to try and get the volume right while recording both at the same time. Plus, then, when you do it in post, you can decide what music you put in and afterwards. And if you can hear a dog barking in the background, I apologize. There's nothing I can do about that. Of course, Sonic just kind of got this circle body and no neck. His head just kind of fits down on his body. His abdomen, rather. Now I'm going to try and start making these a little shorter. They've been about 30 minutes. I'm going to try and cut them down to about 15-20. So I'm definitely not going to color this time. Of course, I say that now. His eyes. I also said I would make 6 of these in total before I decided what to do about them. And this is the 6th Let's Draw that I've done. And I still have not actually decided, except that I'm going to do about 6 more, I think. And then I'll decide. I hate making up my mind, can you tell? And I have not been sketching lately, so I'm a little rusty. You notice I was off for about 2 weeks where I didn't do these. I apologize for that. A lot happened. I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. First, let's talk about Junction. For those of you who don't know, Junction is the adventure game that I've been working on. You can find out more about it here on the Vision Writers channel. I've got 2 different gameplay videos, maybe more depending on when you see this. If you've seen this like 2 years after the game's out, then I've probably got a lot more than just 2. My sketch is really rough today. Wow, it's amazingly rough. And this week, or really the past 3 weeks, I guess it's been a bit more than 3 weeks where I just got a lot done. Finished Serenity's, which is the playable characters. I finished her style sheet, which took forever. A lot more work went into getting her to look right than the others. And I also finished some more art. Go ahead and show some of that now, along with Serenity's style sheet. You can see there's her. And yes, I do add these in post too. Also, here's some artwork that I added. And especially that map. A lot of work it went into that. Which is kind of sad, because I've got to put more work into it. I want to add some more place names on there. And you only see it for like maybe a minute or 2 in game. It's a lot of work for something you don't see very much of. I should probably budget my time better than that. But I didn't know what else to use for the sequences where I needed those. Let's see if I can get his spikes to look right. If you're wondering, I'm doing kind of the newer Sonic. I like his sprites in the older games, but the art they did for him was just kind of weird sometimes. I did always think it was neat that even though the 3 Genesis games, or really 4 if you count Sonic and Knuckles as a separate game. Of course, that one used the same sprites as the other ones, but even though they all ran on the same engine, the first 3 games, they would completely redo the graphics for them. Sonic would have completely different sprites. Move his arm down a little bit. And that was just kind of neat to me. A lot of games, like Mega Man, it's just pretty much the same sprites all throughout all the games for the NES. At least. Let's get these spikes back. Now, hold on. Let's flip them around. Flip the whole canvas, thank you. Kind of get it. See what I need to change. Get a new perspective on them. One of the reasons I didn't do this the past couple of weeks is I did something called Let 'em Dare. Or Loot 'em Dare, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. But it's a game competition in Jam where you have about, depending on which, there's two versions and they go on at the same time. There's a 48-hour version and a 72-hour version. But you've got just 72 or 48 hours to complete a game from scratch. And they give you a theme, and you kind of work within that theme, and it's up to you to how to decide how you want to interpret the theme. Something's wrong with him, but I'm not sure what it is. I'm sure I'll see it after when I'm start putting the video together. I do that. It's easier when you're not talking over it and you can just sit there and look at it for a little bit, figure out what you're doing wrong. You'll notice my lines are really far apart. I'm not getting them. Oops. I should be doing just hitting them over each other, and I'm doing like this. See if I can do it better for this final sketch. But kind of on a whim, I decided, hey, I think I'll do it this time. I wasn't going to originally, but then they announced the theme was minimalism. I thought, there's so many different things you can do with that, and most people, they would just, minimalism, they interpret it as minimalism in art. I thought, there's so many more things you could do with minimalism other than just minimalism style in art. So I thought, I think I'll do it. I wasn't going to, but I did. I'm still not hitting these lines. I can tell I'm out of practice. Been doing other stuff and I've gotten... Took a long time to get used to this thin brush. Now I'm kind of out of it because I haven't... After finally getting used to it, I should have practiced more so that I wouldn't get rusty so quickly, but whatever. But I decided I looked up minimalism, started looking up the history of it. And we usually think of minimalism in art, but it was actually a movement that comprised several different facets of design, and one of them, other than art, was architecture. And in architecture, with minimalism, one of the ideas was not just they would use the cheapest resources that would do the job well, but they would find multiple ways to use one element in the design to do more than one thing. I thought, I think I'll build on that. That's how I'll do my game. And so I decided, you know what, it'd be pretty neat if I'm doing minimalism to use just a minimal amount of graphics. And so I decided, I'll make an RPG. Whoops. Hold on here. Turn on shape dynamics. Wait a minute. Okay. And you'll notice I've still got this, I'm stuck in this little box so that it records better. Started that last week and it worked out really well. Anyways, I decided I'll do an RPG, and the graphics, all the graphics that I'm going to use, the font, everything, it's got to fit into a little bitty 128 by 128 pixel tile map. It'll be filled with 8x8 tiles. It'll be kind of like on the NES where you can flip the tiles. Can't rotate them, but you can flip them, and I'd have to figure out, okay, how do I make this game work and have a lot of variety with only these little bit of graphics in this one little 128 by 128 thing. Originally I was going to do it 256 by 256, but 128 by 128 is what the little use box, if you've ever heard of that, it's a kind of make your own game console. You get to solder the board and everything. And that's what it uses, is basically a 128 by 128. That's all that can fit into the RAM of that little bitty system. So I figured, well, I'll see if I can't fit it into that. And to my surprise, you can fit a lot more into that little bitty size than you would think. And so as I got along, well, for one, I was basing it off an engine. I was going to do at one point I was tinkering around with kind of emulating the Sega Genesis, how they did their graphics, and I made kind of a fake emulator where I could go in and I could program this tile map, so it would use the Genesis kind of style two layers of tiles and certain size and all this, and specific color scheme. He's got his weird little tail there. Actually, I think his tail's supposed to be longer. And it's supposed to be lower down. Something like that. Excuse me. And I used that as my basis to make kind of the NES style tiles, where you only have actually one layer. And it was not as complete as I remembered it being. Like the sprites, I'd never actually gotten around to programming them. His buckles are weird because he's got a buckle on both shoes, but it's only on the outside of each one. It's not anyway. The engine was not as far along as I thought, so I ended up having to do a lot of engine stuff that I wasn't planning on having to do, and that really set me back. And so, but as I went, I realized I can do more with these. Even with these little graphics, I can flip them around and use them for different things. Again, using that theme of minimalism, if I flipped them around, I could do all kind of neat things with them that I wasn't thinking about before. Yeah, the idea for the game kind of got a little bit bigger. And as I started running out of time, I ended up running out of the 48 hours pretty quick. I don't know how they attach. But I kept going, and I could have finished for the 72-hour thing if I really kicked it into gear and I cut a lot of stuff and just kind of made the basic RPG I was going to do, where it's just like one field and then maybe one dungeon or two, and just some basic enemies. But I thought, I don't really want to do that. I kind of want to make a full game out of this. And here, after a couple of weeks, here's kind of what I got on that. And you'll notice that save screen. Might remind you of the old NES, Star Tropics, and the old Zelda game. The original Zelda, that is. So you have your overworld and your battles and everything. I also got some music. Let's take a listen to some of the music. It's kind of NES style chip tunes. And you can probably notice, especially those of you who work with games before, notice that, yeah, there's definitely only 128 by 128 image worth of sprites to work with. Everything's got to fit in there, so you can't really have a lot of NPCs or anything. Rough sketch. But because it's moving along so quickly, and because there's really not a lot to the game, even as much as I want to make it a little bit longer, maybe about 5 hours at most. It's kind of what I'm shooting for, somewhere around there. Shoes. Since I could probably finish it pretty quickly. So I might actually end up doing that. Just pausing work on Junction. Whoops. Let's see, keep disappearing like that. Weird. Pausing work on Junction for a little bit. And then going and working on that and finishing that and then coming back to Junction. I have not decided on if I'll do that or not. But because I can probably finish this game in a couple months. Whereas Junction, it might take all the way to the end of the year. So what I might end up doing is going over and working on this other game. Finishing that and then coming back to Junction. Like I said, I have not made up my mind yet. And you're willing to give your input if you'd rather see that game or if you're more interested in Junction. I figure I can sell that for anywhere from $1 to $5 probably, depending on how complete and how much I put into it. I don't want to make it so long that it's just boring. It's just, yeah, you can do a lot of things with just these tiles, but if it's just same environments over and over again, that gets boring. Let's see, we're 16 minutes in, and we're pretty much finished with them. Thickening the lines, not very well. Shoes are way too big. So we'll see. And if I do finish that first, and come back to Junction, of course that's all the more resources to put into Junction, what I get out of that game. I could tinker with this some more, fiddle with it all day, but I think I'll stop here. There you go, Sonic the Hedgehog. Didn't really talk a lot about the game, Sonic, this time. You should do that. Need to sign my name, I guess. We had an NES growing up, but for about half a year, I guess, we borrowed a Sega Genesis from one of my friends, and all they had was Sonic 2 and Aladdin, the Genesis version of Aladdin. I remember Sonic and Aladdin, but it wasn't as much fun as Sonic. Never did get all the Chaos Emeralds in that. What is today? Today is the May the 10th. Then sometimes we would go to Kroger. Kroger rented games back then. I don't know whether they did that everywhere, but they did that where we were in Texas. 2013. Is that the year? I don't even remember. And we would go and we would rent Sonic 3 a lot. And I never could get past the Carnival Night Zone because of that stupid thing with the little bouncy platforms. Those of you who played the game know what I'm talking about. It's like before game facts and stuff, so if you couldn't figure out what the programmers were thinking, then you were out of luck. Oh, the memories. Well, there you have it, Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you're looking forward to whatever game I end up making now. But I hope you'll enjoy it and join me again next time for our next Let's Draw. See you there. Dale out.